China, places that look unreal. I never understood why people bother with science fiction films, when China is right out there, free of charge, and stranger than anything Hollywood could invent. Across this vast country, nature has shaped landscapes that even when you see them with your own eyes, you're still not sure whether you're looking at reality or dreaming. Not because they were staged, but because millions of years of geology and pressure have created forms that exist nowhere else on Earth. Many lie in remote regions where mountains and rock formations exist by their own rules, needing no one's approval. On this journey, I'll take you to places that science can measure, but the mind struggles to accept. China is not a country in the conventional sense. It is an entire continent compressed within a single set of borders. Deserts sit beside snowfields. Tropical forests meet cold plateaus. Crystal lakes rest at the foot of blazing red mountains. Covering nearly 3.7 million square miles and sharing borders with 14 nations, China has been shaped by two great rivers, the Yellow River and the Yangtze, for 5,000 unbroken years of civilization. From that depth grew three pillars of the Chinese soul: Confucianism, which teaches that family is the universe in miniature; Taoism, which teaches that mountains are not obstacles, they are teachers; and Buddhism, which teaches that the journey up the mountain is not about climbing, it is about letting go. There is a question I always ask when visiting Taoist sacred mountains. Why did they always choose the most dangerous places to build their temples? The answer I found at Huashan is simple: because they believed anything truly worth having would never be easy to reach. Located in Shanxi province, about 75 miles from Xi'an, Huashan is one of the 5 sacred mountains of Taoism. The mountain is defined by massive vertical granite formations, no gentle slopes, no place for the eyes to rest. The most intense section is the plank walk on the south peak, wooden boards bolted into a sheer cliff face, wide enough for one person to pass sideways, with a drop of hundreds of feet below. A safety harness is required. There is also a cave carved into the cliff where legend says an immortal once slept, and if you sit inside long enough, you will have the deepest sleep of your life. They call it the sleep of the mountain. Wuzhen in Zhejiang province has a history of more than 1,300 years, built in the traditional Jiangnan architectural style. White walls, black-tiled roofs, and stilt houses reflected in the canals below. A web of canals completely replaces roads in daily life, with each house having its own private staircase leading down to the water. The indigo-dyed fabric panels hanging along the canals are the town's most iconic image. The tradition of dyeing cloth with indigo leaves here dates back to ancient times. I sat drinking tea in a small shop next to the canal. Watching the water drift quietly past. Some of the finest moments in travel are beautiful, not because so much is happening, but because nothing needs to happen at all. This mountain in Hunan province stands over 4,900 feet above sea level. But what makes it famous is not its height. It is Tianmen Cave, a natural arch near the summit, standing 430 feet tall, 187 feet wide, and 197 feet deep. No other mountain in the world has a natural gateway of this scale near its peak. The people of Zhangjiajie don't call it the gate of heaven. They call it the hole the sky forgot to patch up. Standing beneath it and looking up through the arch at open sky, you understand immediately why. The journey begins via one of the world's longest cable car routes, nearly 4.7 miles, followed by 999 stone steps, climbing almost vertically to the gate. "999 is no accident. In Chinese culture, 9 is the number of permanence and imperial power. At the summit, a small temple holds a well called Tianmen, the Eye of Heaven, angled so that at exactly noon on the summer solstice, sunlight reflects back from its depths. Most tourists walk right past without knowing it exists. I have one personal rule: never trust travel photos. But the first time I saw a photo of Jiuzhaigou, I broke that rule. Then I went, saw it with my own eyes, and came to a painful realization: no lens can honestly capture the color of the water here. Nestled in Sichuan province at elevations from 6,500 to 14,800 feet, the valley holds over 100 lakes side by side, each a different shade of blue. Local Tibetan people say the valley was born from the shattered magic mirror of the god Dage. Each of its 108 pieces became a lake. Walking across Five Flower Lake, I looked down through crystal water and saw ancient tree trunks lying 16 feet below, perfectly preserved for hundreds of years. Nine Tibetan villages still keep a slow, unhurried pace, as if they never got word that tourists had arrived. An elderly woman offered me yak butter tea on a cold morning. She refilled my cup without asking. That is how Tibetan people welcome guests, not with words, but with warmth and action. There are places where silence is not emptiness, but a language of its own, full and deep. Wutai Shan is one of those places. Located in Shaanxi province, it is not a single peak, but a cluster of 5 summits, each with a relatively flat top, like enormous tables set in the open sky. The highest rises above 9,800 feet, keeping the area cool year-round. What I didn't expect was that Wutai Shan is also a great center of learning. For centuries, monks and scholars from Tibet, Mongolia, Korea, and India came here not just to practice, but to debate about scripture, philosophy, and questions that no one could answer with certainty. If one were to draw a comparison, this was the Oxford of Asian Buddhism. The largest temple, Xiantong, was built in 68 AD. Nearby stands the only bronze pagoda at Wutai Shan, cast from 220,000 pounds of bronze in 1602. Local people believe that walking around it 3 times clockwise with genuine reverence brings peace of mind. Naturally, I walked all 3 rounds. In 2009, James Cameron released Avatar, and the world marveled at Pandora's floating mountains. Critics praised his imagination. Except, Cameron didn't imagine quite as much as people thought. He had already seen Zhangjiajie. More than 3,000 quartzite pillars from 650 to over 1,300 feet tall shoot straight up from the ground, each one topped with a full forest of trees gripping the rock for millions of years. The indigenous Tujia people say these are the immortal army of General Zhang, turned to stone to guard the land forever. At Tianmen Mountain, I saw a natural arch punch through the cliff face, over 430 feet tall, wide enough for a 15-story building to pass through. Locals call it Heaven's Gate. I also crossed the glass-bottom bridge nearly 1,000 feet in the air, and I can honestly report that even I needed a slow, deep breath before the first step. Standing there in the late afternoon, watching mist rise from the canyon floor below, I understood why Cameron never called Pandora fictional. Because some things, once you've seen them, just don't sit right being called fiction. People say to heal, you go to the beach or hike a mountain. I'd suggest one more option. Stand in the middle of the Inner Mongolian grasslands until your brain runs out of things to worry about. When space is so wide that every direction is nothing but horizon, and the sky takes up 80% of what you can see, every small worry suddenly feels ridiculous for being so small. The Hulunbuir grasslands stretch across more than 35,000 square miles, rivers winding like silver ribbons across green carpet. Right in the middle of endless green, I found something unexpected: the Shangshawan Desert, a stretch of golden sand that appears out of nowhere. Sliding down its slope, a strange sound rises from within the sand, like a plucked string, like wind through wires. The Mongolian people call this the Singing Sand Desert. That night, I slept in a family's jier, drinking fermented mare's milk, while the father played the morincourt and the wind moved through the grass outside. Standing alone in the grasslands at 2 in the morning, looking up at the Milky Way, I thought, how many nights like this have city people like us missed without ever knowing it? A friend once came back from Xinjiang and told me, "You're walking on Chinese soil, but you'd swear you ended up in the Middle East." I nodded politely. Then I went, stepped into the Kashgar Bazaar, heard a dutar drifting from a narrow alley, watched men in dopper hats selling freshly baked naan, and texted him back 3 words: "You were right." The snow-capped Tianshan Mountains divide grasslands from desert, creating a landscape of rare depth. Seram Lake's surface reflects the sky so perfectly that the line between earth and sky nearly disappears. Further south lies the Taklamakan Desert, called "Once you go in, you can't get out," stretching like a borderless ocean of sand. Along the ancient Silk Road, merchants once carried silk, spices, and stories across Asia and Europe. In the Kashgar Bazaar, craftsmen making instruments and hand-woven rugs worked with patience and pride, a culture you can feel the moment you look at their hands. Pingyao, in Shaanxi province, is one of the very few ancient Chinese cities that has preserved intact its city wall, its street layout, and its architecture from the Ming Dynasty through to the present day. The wall stretches nearly 4 miles, standing 39 feet tall, with 72 watchtowers, representing the 72 most gifted students of Confucius, and 3,000 battlements representing his 3,000 disciples. Confucian philosophy encoded into every military detail. Inside that wall, roughly 45,000 people still live, cook, and run their shops exactly as their ancestors did hundreds of years before them. I climbed the city wall at sunset and looked down at rows of grey roof tiles stretching into the distance, kitchen smoke rising from each home, yellow lamplight flickering through narrow alleyways. The most remarkable thing about Pingyao is not the wall or the history. It's the real people living real lives beneath those 300-year-old roof tiles. After the sheer cliff faces of Huashan, I needed a place where nature doesn't challenge you, but wraps its arms around you. Erhai Lake is exactly that. Located in Dali, Yunnan Province, it stretches 26 miles north to south, 5 miles wide, at an elevation of 6,600 feet. The name means ear-shaped sea, because from above, the lake is shaped like a human ear. The air here is cool, light, and remarkably clear. This is the homeland of the Bai people, who consider white the most sacred color. Their homes have pure white walls painted with murals telling each family's history, passed from one generation to the next. Early one morning, I cycled along the eastern shore at 5 o'clock, while fishermen pulled in their nets and the first rays of sunlight fell on the snow-capped range to the west. That was one of the most beautiful mornings of my entire career as a tour guide. Before the trip, I came well prepared. Altitude medication, permits, a detailed itinerary, and the mindset of someone who has traveled enough not to be easily caught off guard. All of that came in handy, except the last one. Tibet doesn't care how experienced you are. The Tibetan plateau averages nearly 14,800 feet in elevation, high enough that the air is thinner, the sky a deeper blue, and the sun hits your skin like a reminder that there is not much atmosphere left to filter it. The Potala Palace stands on a hilltop over Lhasa, white and red, 1,000 windows glimmering in the highland sun, like a quiet, ageless deity. At Hangzhou Lake, 15,400 feet above sea level, the water is a sapphire blue so intense that it looks like a piece of sky someone set down on the ground and left there. Every year of the goat, thousands of pilgrims walk the lake's full perimeter, over 186 miles, taking nearly a month, and not one of them considers it extraordinary. That might be the most convincing definition of faith I have ever witnessed. Have you ever seen a mountain that looks like it was split in two by the sky itself? Fanjingshan is exactly that mountain. Located in Guizhou province and designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2018, its summit rises above 8,200 feet and is almost always shrouded in cloud, making it look like a floating island drifting through the sky. What makes it most remarkable is a rock formation that shoots from the summit and splits into two separate peaks, each crowned with a small temple, connected by a narrow stone bridge. Every piece of building material was carried up by hand from the base of the mountain, millions of carrying trips over several hundred years. When you press your hand against those bricks, you are paying tribute to millions of people whose names you will never know. The isolated terrain has protected this ecosystem for tens of millions of years, sheltering ancient ferns and the rare Guizhou snub-nosed monkey. Walk slowly through this forest, because you are stepping through 65 million years of Earth's history. Fenghuang sits along the Tuojiang River in Hunan province, built in the early 18th century. This is the homeland of the Miao and Tujia people, known for their signature stilt houses, part on the bank, part extending out over the river on wooden stilts. The entire structure uses no nails whatsoever, held together entirely by traditional wooden joinery. Many of these homes are over 100 years old and still standing strong. The writer Shen Kongwen, born in Fenghuang, once wrote that he had spent his entire life loving a river. Per his last wishes, his ashes were scattered into the Tuojiang River that flows through the ancient town. The Miao people say, the color of the fabric a woman weaves reflects her state of mind. Red is happiness, blue is homesickness, purple means she is waiting for someone. I hired a small boat at 8 in the evening when the lanterns were already lit. Miao boatman didn't speak Mandarin. We sat in silence as the boat drifted along the river. He smoked. I watched the lamplight shimmering on the water. No need for conversation. That was one of the most peaceful moments I've ever had in all my years of travel. Seen from above, the Great Wall does not run straight. It snakes and curves along every ridge of the terrain, climbing peaks, dropping into valleys, gripping cliff faces as though it grew out of the rock itself from the very beginning. More than 13,000 miles long, spanning 15 provinces, built across multiple dynasties over nearly 2,000 years. Ming Dynasty bricks were inscribed with the name of the craftsman who made them. If one cracked or fell short in quality, that person was held personally responsible. Scientists have also found sticky rice starch in the ancient mortar. The people of that era gave up rice meant for eating to make the wall last longer. Border soldiers in those days could remain stationed inside a watchtower for 3 months without coming down from the mountain. They sent signals using smoke by day, fire by night. 1 smoke column meant 100 enemy soldiers. 3 columns meant more than 1,000. A communications network running thousands of miles, needing nothing but fire and wind. Standing on the wall at sunset, watching sections of it wind and disappear into the haze, I thought of some soldier 600 years ago who stood in this exact spot and felt just as alone. Some places need no explanation. You just stand still and feel them. Lijiang in Yunnan province is the heartland of the Naxi people, an ethnic minority with their own distinct culture, language, and writing system who have lived here for more than 1,000 years. The old town has no surrounding city wall, an unusual feature compared to other ancient towns. The Naxi explain it this way: if you place the family name Mu inside the square character for wall, it forms the character for trapped. That is how a small people found a clever way to live in peace with a great empire. Running through every alley is a tiered canal system with clearly defined rules. Mornings for drinking water, midday for washing vegetables, afternoons for doing laundry. An unspoken code that has been honored for more than 800 years. The Naxi have a pictographic script called Dongba, one of the very few such writing systems still in existence anywhere in the world. Today, only about 30 people in Lijiang can read and write it fluently. An elderly woodcarver carves Dongba characters into wood every morning to teach his grandchildren, not to sell, but because if he doesn't teach them, no one will be able to read it anymore. I sat by the canal at 6 in the morning before the tourists arrived. A Naxi grandmother in a blue traditional dress walked past, nodded in greeting, and kept walking. And I thought, this is the real Lijiang. The moment when the ancient town still belongs to its own people. Located in Sichuan province, about 125 miles from Chengdu, Siguniang is a cluster of the 4 highest snow-capped peaks in the province, the tallest rising to over 20,400 feet, permanently blanketed in snow year-round. Three valleys lead to the base of the mountain, each with a completely different character. Old-growth forest and clear streams in Shuangqiao, the clearest views of all 4 snowy peaks in Changping, and a high plateau dotted with hundreds of small granite lakes in Haizi. The Tibetan people who live in the surrounding area do not call these 4 peaks. They call them 4 sisters. According to legend, 4 young women who were tending livestock sacrificed themselves to protect their village, and heaven transformed them into 4 mountain peaks to stand guard over the land forever. Before climbing, many local people still burn incense and offer prayers. Standing in Changping Valley looking up at the 4 peaks in the morning light, I suddenly understood why the Tibetan people call them 4 sisters. Because they don't look like mountains. They look like they're standing watch, warm in a strange way that cold rock doesn't usually manage. Located in Gansu province along the ancient Silk Road, Zhangye Danxia is a landscape of over 190 square miles that has been eroded over tens of millions of years, exposing sedimentary layers from different geological eras, each layer carrying its own color depending on the minerals deposited within it. red from iron oxide, yellow from sulfur, green from copper, purple from manganese, white from limestone. These color bands stack in parallel layers, rippling and curving with the terrain like enormous brushstrokes painted across the earth. The Hui people who live in the surrounding area call these hills the Seven Color Mountains, and tell of a phoenix that flew overhead and shed its multicolored feathers. Those colors seeped into the stone and have remained there ever since, for 1,000 years. The first time I saw a photo of this place, I was certain it had been color graded. And then I stood in front of it in real life. The colors were even more stunning than the photo. This is one of those rare moments when reality completely surpasses expectation. If China were a film, this would be the shot no special effects team could ever recreate. The Forbidden City is the largest surviving wooden palace complex in the world, built in 1406. Nearly 178 acres, close to 1,000 structures, more than 8,700 rooms. The name Xinjiang, the Purple Forbidden City, is not arbitrary. Z is the color of the North Star, the center of the sky. The entire palace complex was built along a north-south axis, stretching from Tianmen Gate in the south to Jingshan Park in the north, the largest and most complete urban planning axis in the history of world architecture. The yellow roof tiles were the exclusive right of the emperor. The red palace walls represented the power of the imperial family, a combination maintained consistently for more than 500 years. The number of bronze studs on the wooden gates was not chosen at random. The doors of the largest halls carry 9 rows by 9 rows, 81 studs in total. In the I Ching, 9 is the greatest yang number, symbolizing supreme power. The gates of princes and officials were reduced in number according to rank. I stood in the courtyard of the Hall of Supreme Harmony at 8 in the morning, alone in a space that once held hundreds of thousands of people. And I thought of the officials who had to kneel here, faces bowed to the ground, who had never once been permitted to look upon the emperor's face. That absolute power, invisible but real, still echoes somewhere in the air of that wide-open courtyard. Karakul Lake in Xinjiang sits along the Karakoram Highway connecting China and Pakistan, at an elevation of nearly 11,800 feet above sea level. The name Karakul means Black Lake, because at night, the water reflects the dark sky like a mirror. By day, the lake takes on a crystal turquoise color, perfectly reflecting the permanently snow-capped peaks of the Pamir Range, the highest of which, Musta Atta, rises to over 24,600 feet. Surrounding the lake are the white round yurts of the Kyrgyz people, one of the last nomadic communities still living according to traditional customs on Chinese soil. Kyrgyz legend tells that the lake was formed when a heavenly god poured water down from the sky to extinguish a great fire. That water carried the blue of the sky with it, soaked into the lake bed, and has held that color there ever since. The Chinese have a saying, "Above is heaven, below are Suzhou and Hangzhou." Westlake is the main reason Hangzhou gets named in that saying. About 2.5 square miles in area, 9 miles in circumference, surrounded by rolling green hills. As far back as the 13th century, the beauty of the lake had already been catalogued into 10 signature views, each tied to a specific season or time of day, a way of teaching people to see with feeling, not just with their eyes. That same aesthetic system was later studied by the Japanese and applied to the art of traditional garden design. I rented a small wooden boat and rowed out alone to the middle of the lake while the morning mist had not yet lifted. And I sat there, letting the boat drift with the gentle breeze. In that stretch of time, I understood why hundreds of poets had sat in this very spot and written, not because the lake is more special than any other lake, but because it makes you stop. And you only truly see things when you've stopped. The Potala Palace stands atop Red Mountain in Lhasa on the Tibetan Plateau, rising roughly 980 feet from the base of the mountain to the roof of the palace, while Lhasa itself already sits at an elevation of about 12,100 feet above sea level. White and red rising against the deep blue of the high-altitude sky. First built in the 7th century and extensively renovated in the 17th, the palace contains 1,000 rooms, 10,000 shrines, and more than 200,000 Buddha statues. When the car carried me into Lhasa from the airport, the Potala appeared in the distance, white and red against a blue sky. It wasn't just beautiful. It had weight, the weight of faith, of millions of pilgrims who had made their way here across centuries, all of it pressed into stone and plaster, standing firm through every era that has passed. China is a country shaped by contrasts, scorching deserts beside crystal lakes, stone pillars, thousands of feet tall, rising through cloud, boundless grasslands stretching up to plateaus that nearly brush the sky. No two landscapes are alike, and that is exactly what makes this place impossible to capture in a single trip or a single video. What defines China isn't any one landmark, it is the distance between them. The road from Kashgar to Lhasa. From the grasslands of Inner Mongolia to the valleys of Jiuzhaigou. Every mile carries layer upon layer of history, the stories of people who have lived, adapted, and held on to their land across thousands of years. When this journey comes to a close, China remains, not as a destination fully explored, but as a place that keeps revealing itself from every new angle. China isn't just something you see, it is something you feel through its geography, its history, and the people who give every corner of it a soul. If this journey has made you curious, don't let me travel alone. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and we'll hit the road again on the next adventure.